is so doing, and then I'll actually start it.
Thank you, Chair. Ben, can you let me know when we are live, please?
I'll just confirm we are live streaming on YouTube now.
Great, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome on this sunny June afternoon to the LEP AGM meeting. We have a lot to cover, and I think importantly to welcome Mayor Tracy Brabin to her first meeting, and will very shortly become a member of this board. But I think importantly, if I may, as chair, on behalf of the whole board, somewhat belatedly to offer the LEP's congratulations to you on your election, and with a desire from all of us that the partnership we've built across both the public and the private sectors will go on to even greater success during your tenure, Tracy. But we'll come to perhaps a little further introductions and sharing of who's who a little later in the agenda, if you don't mind. So as I say, welcome one and all. And we have got quite a lot to get through. A lot of it is procedural, but actually important stuff, and particularly in the context of making sure the mayoral position is now embedded in all of our constitutional and other documents, as well as looking at the future journey of the CA, now that we are in that happy place that some of us have worked long and hard for so long. But that's yesterday, and it's all about today and tomorrow. So welcome. We've got to do, I think, Caroline, or is it Angela? I'm not sure which of you. We just have to do the membership bit of the LEP, and then we can do the rest of the meeting, and I'll go through the formal apologies. So I'm not sure whether I'm turning to you, Caroline, or to Angela to deal with agenda item 1, but whoever it is, perhaps you'd be good enough just to take us through it, and hopefully people will have read the papers. Angela.
Chair, I'm going to take that one, thank you. You through this. Yes, the first report on the agenda, as is the case at the annual meeting, is to confirm membership. There's a number of different aspects to the report. It's probably most neatly set out at the recommendations at paragraph 10. So there's a number of things to note and also to confirm and agree. The first one is to note the local authority representatives and substitutes who have been appointed to the LEP board, which are set out in Appendix 1 to the report. And secondly, to confirm the current private sector representatives of the LEP board, which are also set out in Appendix 1. As the chair has alluded to, also to confirm the West Yorkshire Mayor, Tracy Brabin, as a member of the LEP board, and to note the agreed terms of office for the LEP chair and for Mark Roberts to continue in his role as private sector deputy chair of the board. There's then a number of appointments and key leads. So at 10.5, to appoint a business representative organisation rep as a co-optee on the LEP board. Chair, I'll pause on that one. I don't know if we have a name to put forward at this point for that term of office.
If I could just set some very brief context, it's long been my desire to embrace a much wider range of the business representative communities, whether it be CBI, IOD, FSB, chambers, etc. And at this point in time, they are discussing as to who will be the first of the rotating co-opted members to the LEP board. So if the board could just, when we get to the approvals, have in mind that it's a name to be advised, but to at least agree the principle at this AGM. So thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. Finally, to continue with these, to confirm Mandy Ridyard as the member of the LEP board to represent and engage with SME business community as the SME champion. To confirm the chair, Roger Marsh, as the chair of the Business Communications Group, Kate Hainsworth as the LEP's diversity champion, and finally to agree that we continue the partner council observer representatives being invited to attend LEP board meetings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I guess unless there are any questions, a simple thumbs up or show of hands to confirm people are content with those recommendations. And it would appear that there is sufficient hands up to confirm that. So formally, Tracy, welcome to the LEP board. Let me deal with apologies. I have heard from Councillor Hinchcliffe, who I think, like Tracy, was is continuing a Transport for the North board, and I think it's sensible that she so does. So she sends her apologies. Councillor Waller from York is attending in place of Councillor Aspden, and I did have apologies from Peter Muckler, our senior senior Whitehall sponsor, but I'm delighted to see he's with us. So good afternoon to you, Peter. And I think that's all of the apologies that I've had noted. So let's perhaps again just do the process thing. Agenda item 3, any declarations of interest in the items in the agenda that anybody wishes to note. Clearly, if going through the agenda there is anything that suddenly arises as previously, please let us know and we'll record it. So I'll just pause momentarily just to see if anybody wants to say anything. Not that I can see, and I'm hoping James is looking at both the screens. So thank you for that. I'm not aware that any of the items are for exclusion of the press and the public. So fine with that. I should have said at the outset, one hopes that the next meeting, subject to availability of space of this LEP board, could be in person, but we will have to see, subject to what is obviously a moving feast, as we know, in terms of nationally as well as in certain bits of the north. Agenda item 5 is the minutes, but actually can I pause before we go to the approval of the minutes to give the opportunity to Tracy and her introduction to the LEP board, and perhaps after a few words, I'm going to invite each of the private sector members in rapid fire. So there's a clue in rapid fire, because we've provided to Tracy's office, and she may or may not have had a chance to read them, the biographies of all of the private sector members, some of whom she may have met, some of whom she may know of, and some of whom she may have not either met or know of to date. And I thought it would be helpful to her, A, to make some perhaps remarks as she joins the board, but also, as I say, and I'll come round in not a particular order, but if you don't mind, I'll ask you in turn, starting with obviously my deputy Mark Roberts, and then work through colleagues, so that, as I say, in rapid fire, Tracy gets a little bit of a sense of who you are, and over the weeks and months ahead, we'll get to know us all very well, I hope. So, Tracy, would you like to come in?
Thank you, and what an absolute pleasure to be here today. And firstly, I just want to thank all of you for supporting businesses and your colleagues through this dreadful pandemic. And hopefully we are coming out the other side, and whether June the 21st is going to be the day that we all unlock, let's hope so, and we can get back to hopefully some sort of normality. And if I can just put on record my personal thanks to Roger Marsh during the campaign process, and he was a wise sounding board when I needed to understand more about business in West Yorkshire, but when I was being grilled by the CBI and other organisations. So I just want to thank him for his impartial, non-political advice. And it's great to see so many friends already on this board, people I've met and come across going for, not just as a candidate, but the 5 years of being a Member of Parliament in Batley and Spen. If I could just highlight a couple of things that might be of interest. We are working very hard to get a first 100 days outcomes of my 10 manifesto pledges, but there are just a couple that I think may be of interest to you when you're talking to colleagues and thinking about how we can work more closely together. and that's 1,000 jobs for young people. I've also pledged to support businesses nationally and internationally to bring inward investment. One of those suggestions is a film studio of the North to identify where we can find that funding. I've lots of ideas and plans for young people around digital skills as well. Listening to business, I'm hearing the biggest problem is around skills, that you want to expand, you want to bring on more staff, but it's finding those people with that talent. And also really important for me is that we hit that climate zero carbon emissions target by 2038. It's really ambitious. It's ahead of the government, but I think we can do it. But it also gives us scope for loads of business opportunities around the green sector and reindustrializing those heartlands in a sustainable way in the green sector, and also using Kickstarter to enable young people to work in a green sector for a number of months to get some experience and to hopefully then have something on their CV that they can then be more employable. But I know we're going to be working closely together. I'm really looking forward to populating my culture committee. I did feel it was a big manifesto commitment, my Creative New Deal, and I didn't feel that the committees currently had the emphasis on culture as the engine for regeneration, jobs, skills, and of course well-being coming out of this pandemic. So I'll be populating that, and obviously if you have an interest, please do let to my office know. I can imagine Collie will be the first in line for that, and just to say to Collie and to colleagues in Bradford as well, 2025 and Leeds 2023 are going to be massive for us as a region, and I know there's going to be loads of business opportunities coming off the back of that. So I'll stop there. I know you've got a packed agenda, and Roger, it's a real pleasure. I will have to whiz off because I'm heading to London for my first outing on Peston, so wish me luck with Amber Rudd, and I'm going to give it a bit of Yorkshire what for, so I look forward to hearing from all of you in time. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm sure in the words of Strictly Come Dancing, it will be a 10 from Len or a 10 from LEP. But anyway, we'll see. Good luck with that. So, as I said, rapid fire. Mark Roberts, the Deputy Chair of the LEP. Mark.
Thank you, Roger, and huge welcome to the board, Tracy. Mark Roberts, entrepreneur and founder of a craft beer online retailer, Beerhawk, which we started about 8 or 9 years ago with two of us basically in a shed, and we're now employing about 170 people in Leeds. Background in digital e-commerce marketing, so your points on digital skills resonates very, very strongly with me. And with LEP duties, I'm private sector member on our transport committee, LEP representative on transport for the North, which I know we've just seen each other on, and having previously helped a bit on employment and skills under Rashik. So there you go, rapid fire.
And still living in Harrogate, but we'll change that one day, Mark. Can I move to Kate Hainsworth, and then I'll come to Rashik Palmer. Kate Hainsworth, who is also our diversity champion. Kate.
Hi there, Mayor Brabin. Great to meet you. And yes, I'm Kate Hainsworth. I'm a diversity champion, as Roger said. Very passionate, as you'd expect, about inclusion, and it was great to see that as a top priority for your campaign as well. Delighted you're going to be joining myself and colleagues in an event in July, talking to communities, which is fantastic that you're making the time to do that. But in my day job, I'm Chief Exec of Leeds Community Foundation and Give Bradford. And we also serve Wakefield as the national accredited body serving Wakefield as well. So we have an interest in those three areas across West Yorkshire, and work very closely with colleagues in One Community and in Calderdale Community Foundation. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a picture of where I'm coming from. Thank you.
No, thank you, Kate. And to Rashik Palmer, who's the current chair of the Employment Skills Panel, and actually, in terms of time served, the longest standing member of the LEP board, him having been appointed about a month before I took my own chair role. So, Rashik.
Thanks, Roger, and great to meet you again. I know you joined our Employment Skills Panel earlier this month. And my day job, I'm IBM Fellow and Vice President for Technology for EMEA. So think of me as IBM's lead technologist for Europe, Middle East and Africa. I have other jobs as well. I have a couple of professor positions at Borough College. I also chair a board of trustees for IVE, which is a bridge organisation, part of the Arts Council, focused on driving creativity skills in young people, using that as a way of helping get out of social deprivation. And then in my spare time, I'm also trying to build a radio station for Hindus in Yorkshire, which we've got the license for now. So we're about to launch the station in the next few weeks.
Hey, Radio Rashid, here we come.
Radio Rangoli, please. Yes.
Exactly. I was hoping you might say something like that. I would like to go to Helen Featherstone, who I'm sure is on the call, or I've seen is on the call. Are you there, Helen?
Hi, yes, I am.
Oh, hi, Helen.
Hi, and hello, Tracy. I'm Helen Featherstone. It was great that you could come to YSP the other week. So I'm Deputy Director at YSP, so I'm responsible for all of the kind of business, finance and operations of the Sculpture Park. And we currently employ about 240 something people. I've always worked in the arts and cultural sector, kind of championing access and that culture and arts is for everybody, and also a lot of the well-being aspects and benefits of arts and well-being as well. So it was great to see that in your manifesto.
Thank you, Helen. To Andrew Wright, who currently chairs the Business Innovation and Growth Panel. Andrew.
Hi, yes, hello Tracy. In business,
Andrew, you're having a bit of a signal problem. Are you perhaps? Would it help if we went off on mute, all of us, rather than you?
Yeah, sorry. Welcome to South Huddersfield Broadband. I'm hoping. Can you give me a thumbs up, Roger, if you can hear me now? Okay, good. Yeah, 20 years in business leadership, Tracy. Started in international business, India and China and that kind of thing. But the last 10 years I've been in Yorkshire, originally running Reliance Precision, which is a mechanical engineering company in Huddersfield, doing space motors and other high-tech sort of stuff. But more recently, I'm chairman of AW Hainsworth, which is a very old 238-year-old textile business in Pudsey. We do the red cloth, the beef eaters and the lifeguards and that kind of thing. I'm a governor at Calderdale College and keen on skills and training, but obviously doing business, economy and innovation, that's really my passion, especially innovation. I've done 3 startups in Yorkshire. As I said, live in Huddersfield, and I'm a member of Huddersfield Core Society. And I hope we'll see our committee soon enough.
Thank you, Andrew. I seem to recall, and I can never remember the name of that comet, but you were the chief executive of a business that made a piece of this world that landed on another world in the cosmos, and I can't remember the name of the comet now, but you probably remind me.
Phoebe was the one that went down to the comet, yes, and I'm just trying to remember the name of the one that it's also the name of the 4-letter acronym as well, but I can't do it either. But Phoebe was the one that went down to the comet. Yep.
So woolen textiles may be in history, but actually modern day high technology in currency. So moving to Joanna Robinson, and then I'll come to Amir Hussain. Joanna.
Hi there, huge congratulations Tracy and welcome to the LEP board. I'm Joanna Robinson, I'm business leader within manufacturing and engineering, and more recently I started in my own property business, but regrettably this is my last day on the LEP board, so unfortunately I don't think we'll have much chance to work together in the future unless we do something different in the future and our paths cross, but I wish you lots of success in the future, and I'm sure your tenure will be a very productive one.
Thank you, Joanna. Recognising that Tracy won't be with us when I was going to give my little very brief thank you, but we'll have a more pleasurable thank you when we're allowed, Joanna, is that having been on the LEP board for 5 years, previously being the SME champion and chaired the business communications group, you have added a huge amount of value to our narrative, to our thinking, to our work, and formally at this juncture on behalf of the whole board, and as I said, separately we'll celebrate that contribution as well as wishing you well. If I can, the minutes can record our formal thanks to you in that sort of very sort of not so much sterile way, but kind of remote way, seeing we're doing this digitally, but we will catch up later. Amir Hussain and then Cully, please. Amir.
Thanks, Roger, and hi, Tracy. It's great to have you on the board. I guess to give you a little bit of background, I founded Yemi Architects in Bradford, which essentially sits around this sort of built environment, outcomes-driven sort of role within communities. I would say that most of my emphasis and efforts really try to unlock the potential of disadvantaged communities, and particularly the Asian business community, which I think has got a lot of latent potential and capacity. And to that end, we're working with the LEP and Bradford Council to run a coaching program. We also work around sort of trying to sort of improve supply chain opportunities to try and get through to hard to reach or so-called hard to reach communities. And I would say that one of my biggest sort of areas of interest is really around places where the market economics just don't make development viable. And really, how do we use market making as a mechanism to create the leverage, the private sector to do things within the built environment? I also run a technology company, and I also sort of try to work around sort of uplifting a lot of existing assets within our commercial work. So I definitely hope we get lots of opportunities to cross paths and share some of these ideas.
Thank you, Amir, and some weekends he has off as well. So can I go to you, Cully, and next to Cameron thereafter? Cully.
Great, thanks, Roger, and hello, Tracy. Good to see you again, and it's thrilled that made such a commitment to culture and creativity as we knew you would, and your passion for young people. Those echo really importantly to the strands that we're all trying to work with, and it's particularly exciting that there's such a strong narrative building around culture and creativity, as you say, with it being kickstarted by Leeds 2023 and Kirklees supporting that with a year of music in 23, Coldsdale celebrating the anniversary of the cultural year in 24, and of course Bradford bidding to be City of Culture in 25. So it feels like there's a really powerful narrative building, momentum building that is really about saying how important culture and creativity is in both our economic and social life in the city and the recovery of the region. So happy to play my part in whatever way would be most useful, both in terms of relationships to the LEP and the mayoral authority, but also in partnership through all the other creative opportunities that I know will come our way.
Thank you, Cully, and I know you've got to leave early, so don't worry when you have to leave us. So to Mr. Impact Hub himself, before we go on to Mandy, Cameron Rashid.
Thank you, Roger. So it was lovely to meet you yesterday, Tracy. So I'm a founding director of Bradford City of Culture Trust, which is the trust that's leading the bid for Bradford to become City of Culture 2025, fingers crossed. I also sit on a technical panel with Pro Bono Economics, which is chaired by Lord Gus O'Donnell, which is around championing the case for civil society to play more of a role as well as enterprise and the public sector. And my day job is I'm a founding chief executive of Impact Hub Bradford, which is one of 105 hubs globally. So they're in places like New York, Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Waikato, and kind of everywhere in between. It's a year to the day today that we got our license to join the network. So there's 17,000 change makers globally, and we're advocates and championing the case for social enterprise. We're a small but ambitious organization which probably punches or tries to punch above its weight. Launching in a pandemic has presented its challenges, but I'm sure with a mayor like yourself, your background with the co-ops and your, I think having in your DNA a case for the creative industries and social enterprise, I'm confident that Yorkshire and indeed Bradford can become a destination for social innovators across the country. And I look forward to meeting you very soon.
Thank you, Cameron. To Mandy Ridyard, who's just taken on the role as SME champion, but also an exciting development when it comes to Space Yorkshire. Mandy.
Thanks, Roger, and congratulations, Tracy. It's great to meet you. And it's great to see such a positive and ambitious 100 Days Challenge, which plays into lots of things that I'm interested in. So first of all, my company is Produmax. We're an aerospace engineering company based just outside of Bradford, and we are the current Make UK SME of the Year. And I'm particularly interested in SMEs. We have tons of them in our region and across Yorkshire. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to unlock that potential, especially around the productivity agenda. My other two interests, though, lie in skills, where I'm a Future Ready Skills Commissioner, and I'm co-chair of the Local Digital Skills Partnership for West Yorkshire. And then finally in innovation collaboration and inward investment as a really strong group to create demand. And I was really interested and pleased to see your meeting with South Yorkshire, because as chair of Space Hub Yorkshire, one of the things I'm trying to do is to connect a virtual space campus around the universities, to pull the 4 LEPs together to create a really exciting proposition to brand Yorkshire as a destination for space technology and to move that across into other sectors. So really excited to work with you, and we'll look forward to hoping our paths cross.
Thank you, Mandy. To Simon Pringle, who is stepping down from the Green Economy panel, but will remain as a LEP board member. So Simon, and then last but by no means least, Shirley. Simon.
Roger, thank you. And Tracy, really delighted to meet you. Yes, as Roger says, I'm stepping down as chair of the Green Economy panel, having been on that panel for the last 8 years. And so I've been interwoven into the work that we've been doing, and I'm fully aware of the extent of the challenge, but also the extent of the opportunity, as you highlighted in your early comments, that really do face us. We've got a unique combination of assets across the region, and I think really putting them to work in terms of decarbonising, but also bringing sustainable economic and inclusive growth is really very exciting. My day job's built on 25 years experience in energy, environment and sustainability, and I run an SME management consultancy based in central Leeds, which has grown steadily over the last 8 years. So that's my day job. I have other roles as well, as many on the board do. So I'm an honorary professor at Edinburgh Business School, an associate fellow at Chatham House, and I'm also chair of a children's innovation and STEM skills charity called Solutions to the Planet, amongst a few other things. They combine really to place focus on the agenda that I think is one of the most significant challenges and opportunities that face it. So really looking forward to working with you on that, Tracy. And I'm not disappearing from the Green Economy panel. I'm just stepping down from the chair so that somebody else can do a better job than me over the next 8 years. So that's the plan.
Thank you, Simon. And that is a big challenge for somebody else. And can I make sure the minutes record our thanks as a board to you for all you've done, and particularly in the work to declare the climate emergency, but also the development with officers of the carbon reduction pathways, with all of the challenges that faces as we grapple with, but will eventually prevail on an economy that continues to grow, but also reverses the carbon journey downwards towards net zero. And finally, as I said, last but by no means least, recognising the importance and the highest concentration of HE anywhere in the country outside of London and the South East. Shirley Congdon, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Bradford. Shirley.
Thank you, Roger, and congratulations, Tracy. I hope to meet you very, very soon. Obviously, as Roger said, the universities in Yorkshire and West Yorkshire indeed are particularly strong and have got a connected focus currently on working together on levelling up and social and economic growth. And we've been looking at your manifesto, and we're looking forward to be able to work with you very, very closely. Nearly every area that you've detailed in that manifesto is where we can offer our significant strength and contributions. In every area indeed, and we're particularly interested in helping maybe to scope out what a digital academy would look like, the development of green skills, and clearly in Bradford particular, the culture piece.
So thank you, Shirley, and I hope certainly our public sector colleagues, and perhaps even Peter Mucklow as well, will have been able to see what hopefully you've seen, Tracy, a board that together with our public sector colleagues reflects the economy. This is not a Noah's Ark 2x2. It's trying to reflect all of the facets and the variety which is key to our vitality going forward, as well as all of the other aspects of diversity that we seek to achieve. Is it perfect? No. Is it best in class? Certainly. So thank you for that. I wondered, whether all of the leaders have met you as yet. I'm assuming in one way or another you have met, but in the interest of time, if they will allow me, without any sense of discourtesy, we'll move the agenda on and get through the various items. So can I go to what was agenda item 5, but it's now 5B in my nomenclature, the minutes of the last meeting, which was held remotely, and just to ask if there are any comments or otherwise or questions on those minutes before seeking your approval that they accurately record our debate, discussion, and where appropriate decisions. So I'll just pause to see if anybody wants to comment and then ask for a show of hands or thumbs momentarily. So I'll pause momentarily. There being none, so perhaps a collection of thumbs up would be helpful if we could approve the minutes of our last meeting. Yes, we've got those. Thank you. Now we're going to move into agenda item 6 and nominations to the West Yorkshire Combined Authority and its committees and appointments to outside bodies. Again, I'm just checking. I thought it would be Caroline. So Caroline, we'll come to you. And I may need to just add in some bits regarding the MCA committees, but we'll see how we go. We'll do it together. Caroline.
Okay. Understood. If it helps, Chair, I think I'm the lead officer for items 6 to 9. So
right, well,
bear with me for the next tranche of this meeting. So item 6, as you've said, is the nominations to the combined authority itself. And that is Roger Marsh as the chair, with his substitute Mark Roberts, the deputy chair of the LEP board. So that is the first item there for decision by the LEP board. And the second one is in terms of nominations to the committees of the combined authority. And of course, as this board is aware, we've brought a report to the last meeting, those committees are the previous panels, I suppose, merge into our new committee arrangements, subject to their agreement at the Combined Authorities annual meeting on the 24th of June. So the nominations which are in Appendix 1 to this report are proposed for those new meetings. And it's probably fair to say, and the Chair, I'm sure, will allude to this in any event, we are still, it's a very active agenda in terms of pulling all the new arrangements, the terms of reference and the mechanics together for those committees to be able to hit the ground running following the annual meeting. And so we are seeking in this recommendation authority for the chair to revise or add to nominations which may be required before the annual meeting. And as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, there's one additional committee is proposed to be added to our portfolio of arrangements, and that is the Culture, Arts and Creative Industries Committee, following the Mayor's pledges and to be chaired by the Mayor. And that is one example where we will still need to, discussions will need to take place in advance of the annual meeting in terms of the membership of that committee. So that's an example of sort of this being a very live and very active agenda. Moving on, we're seeking, looking at this Appendix 1 sets out nominations for our 2 private sector members on the Transport Committee. And then in terms of outside bodies, nominates Roger Marsh as a member of the TFN's Partnership Board with Mark Roberts as his substitute, and also notes the chair is a nominated representative to the Strategic Oversight Board for Northern Powerhouse Investments Fund, with Ben Still as his alternate, and that Roger Marsh also continues to be appointed to the Department for International Trade's Trade Advisory Group. So I shall stop there, Roger. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for completeness, it is proposed, subject to the combined authorities ratification, that the new committees to be created, that in no particular order, the Business Economy and Innovation Committee chaired by Councillor Pandor, the Deputy Chair proposed would be Andrew Wright, the Climate, Energy and Environment Committee chaired by Councillor Swift, the Deputy Mark Roberts, the Culture, Arts and Creative Industries Committee, which Caroline just mentioned, which will be chaired by the Mayor herself, with Helen, the proposal is with Helen Featherstone as a private sector member, as Deputy. Employment and Skills to be led by Councillor Lewis, Rashid Palmer, for obvious reasons, as the deputy. The Place, Regeneration and Housing Committee to be chaired by Councillor Jeffrey, that Amir Hussain be the deputy chair from the private sector. And finally, the Finance, Resources and Corporate Committee, which again, I think, which replaces the Investment Committee, which I believe, again, Tracy, you as Mayor will chair. You may have the lucky choice of having me as the deputy, but I guess that will be due to ratification. So thank you for that. So can I just again invite colleagues to confirm they're happy with all of those nominations and proposals, but also, as Caroline said, in terms of any final matters that need to be resolved prior to the CA meeting, that you delegate authority to me to do it on our collective behalf. So thumbs up for all of those. Looks like we've got a few. Thank you very much for that. So agenda item 7, Caroline.
Yes, thank you. As this is our annual meeting, as we do every year as a matter of good practice, we ask the LEP to review all our constitutional documents. We seek to do that on your behalf, which this report has done. And the report is probably in 2 parts. So the first part of it, hopefully a helpful little key at 2.3, which sets out the amendments that we're proposing are made to the constitutional documents. Hopefully you'll see from that there is nothing of any substantive change. It is certainly reflecting the fact that we have moved to a mayoral authority, so there have been some consequential amendments in that regard, but nothing more significant. However, for completeness, pleased it's an electronic pack, we have attached all the constitutional documents to the report, and we've highlighted in yellow on each of those where the changes have been made. Happy to take any questions if anybody has any, but hopefully it is self-explanatory on that part. The second part of the report is a change in terms of the standards arrangement, and as members are aware, all LEP board members sign up to a members code of conduct, and the proposal here is to revise that code of conduct, and a revised draft is attached for members' consideration. This is based on some work that the Local Government Association did in terms of providing a model code of conduct for local authorities, and that led to us revising our combined authorities code of conduct for combined authority members at its last meeting, and we're proposing to do the same in terms of the LEP board. I suppose in terms of hopefully, I would say again this is more around emphasis and clarity and transparency rather than a substantive shift in terms of the obligations or responsibilities that fall under that code. And the difference is para 213 of the report seeks there to highlight the differences in the language, I think, as much as anything of that code. So I hope it's helpful, because I think the general feeling is it's probably more straightforward, written more plainly in terms of what's expected, isn't lost in the vagaries of language. The responsibilities in terms of the register of interest, it's actually brought local authorities' registers of interest up to the standard that the LEP board has previously had to meet in terms of its register. So your register of interest won't change in any substantive form. The questions remain the same. The obligations to complete that information are the same. It is simply the language in the code of conduct itself. So the recommendation is that the LEP's governance documents, appendices 1 to 12, are approved, but very happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any questions on this? I know there's some other questions that I missed from the previous item, which I'll come back to momentarily. Are there any questions on this before I look for your thumbs up approval? So perhaps there are no questions. Could you perhaps indicate your approval to all the various changes that we've had to make, and on pages 21 through 106, so a good chunk of the paperwork. So thank you for that. Apologies, Shirley and Kate, if I missed your questions in the chat regarding the committees, and particularly Inclusive Growth Panel. So I'm going to come to you first, Kate, and then I will go to Shirley Congdon, but I should have welcomed Councillor Hinchcliffe, who's joined us, and Councillor Pandor, who joined us after we started. So forgive me for not doing that earlier. So Kate, would you like to kick off?
Sure, yes. Forgive me if I've missed this somewhere, because there was a lot of paper to read. So forgive me if I've got the wrong end of the stick. But I was just interested to ask regarding those board members among us who were placed on the Inclusive Growth Panel, and what the plan is for us, and how inclusive growth will continue to be well championed across these committees.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ben perhaps to come in if he's here, or if not, Alan. And perhaps Shirley, we could take your question at the same time. We'll deal with them both at once, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. It was really in relation to the fact that, we now got these committees, which I really fully support. They're going to be really strong, but there isn't any representation from HE on any of the business, economic innovation or employment and skills committee. And I really feel with, the strength of the input that we've been making collectively, it might be worth just giving some consideration to how we would be able to make better support to those committees. And equally, we have had Peter O'Brien, who's been working so effectively for YU and all of the universities on the business, economy and innovation work. And I'm wondering how that work could continue and be even more impactful than it has been previously, when the representation doesn't look particularly strong.
Thank you, Shirley. Very good, both very good points. So Ben, are you able to come in on either or both of these, either supported by Alan and if necessary by Caroline? But Ben.
Chair, I will do. Thank you. I think, as Caroline said when she was giving her overview of the committees, we're at a time of kind of considerable change, and the committee structures are changing, and obviously we now have Mayor Brabin, who's also reviewing and looking at the committees and their makeup and their objectives. So in that context, yes, the Inclusive Growth Panel has its functions have been taken on board across the other panels. In the terms of reference, or the draft terms of reference that will go to the combined authority, each of those committees will be looking to appoint a member who has got particular responsibilities to ensure that equality, diversity and inclusivity matters are mainstream through all the activities of those boards. And I think on top of that, the committee chairs and deputy chairs will want to see how the work of the committee beds down, and bring in additional members as they think right for the subjects that they're taking forward. So I think this is very much a work in progress. As I think I said at the last level, this is absolutely not a reduction in the focus of inclusive growth, equality and diversity. In fact, quite the opposite. It's one of the things that we're going to make absolutely clear through the terms of reference, through the performance metrics of the committees, that it's driven through the heart of everything that the local enterprise partnership and the combined authority does. Turning to Shirley's point, I think it's my same generic point, which is I think the committee chairs and deputy chairs want to look at membership, want to consider whether they need additional either ex officio or expert members, because I think you make some good points. Unfortunately, I lost signal when you mentioned Peter O'Brien, so if you want me to, I can answer that one probably, but I lost track of what your question was.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Did you want to come in, Caroline? Because there's a couple of comments that I'd like to add. Hopefully, will reassure colleagues that this is to be done by us, not done by me to anybody with that authority. Caroline.
Just maybe a helpful point. The appendix to the LEP board report sets out the LEP board members and private sector representatives who are proposed. But what it doesn't show on there are what we refer to as our ex officio advisory reps, so all the advisory reps, I'm looking at, if we look at Employment and Skills Committee as it stands at the moment, those advisory reps that we have on there, the advisory reps will still be flowing through to the new committees. And they're appointed as an ex officio, so they're not actually shown. So I suppose the table that you've had in front of you doesn't show the full picture. So I hope that provides some assurance.
Thank you, Caroline. It certainly would be my intention, to your point, Kate, you know how I judge that the real prize isn't the economic growth, that's the enabler to the thing we really want to achieve, which is the abolition of poverty and deprivation, that I would intend to use that authority you've given me to consult with a number of people to ensure that where we start off is appropriate to the work in progress point that Ben made. As regards your point, Shirley, I agree completely. We need to get further representation from HE in its widest context, and maybe the involvement of Peter O'Brien as an individual would in part solve that. But again, I think, just to reinforce the point Ben made and Caroline, there are some moving parts here, but what we wanted to do was to at least land on certain things, and also hopefully with the authority you've given me, that we'll be able to finalise things ahead of the CA meeting. But again, hopefully you will be content that I will obviously want to consult where, and will be guiding us where I should, so to make sure people are broadly content with where we get to, even though it might not be complete perfection from day one, although that would be the ideal thing. So hopefully that's helpful to responding. Okay, I think we better move on then to agenda item 8. Caroline, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. These ones should be relatively quicker, hopefully. So agenda item 8 is the annual accountability reports, and this is again, it's providing the annual report to the LEP board on the number of complaints or concerns raised about the LEP or LEP board members in the first part. And again, I'm very pleased to say that we've had no complaints or concerns raised again in this last financial year. So that element is straightforward. The second aspect of the report is to update and share with the LEP board the summary of applications for grants that we've had considered, which we assess under our conflicts of interest policy and take through a more rigorous decision-making process, again, in terms of the transparency for that. And they are appended we've had 2 such grants, and they are listed there for transparency at Appendix 1. So this report is for LEP board to note both those aspects. Thank you.
And just to remind us, Caroline, how many uninterrupted years of no complaints so far? Although I'm aware of somebody who's not happy recently, but that's for next year's annual accountability report. How many years of without?
Certainly since we've been recording, I'm not aware of any at all. So
since records began.
Since records began. Yes.
So hopefully our senior Whitehall representative will note that with some pleasure that I do as well, albeit it's always nice to get a challenge occasionally. So thank you for that, Caroline. I guess to the last of your items, number 9.
That's correct, Chair. Again, as part of our annual business, we are seeking confirmation that we adopt the LEP board members' remuneration and expenses scheme as appended there for 2021-22. There are no changes to it from the current remuneration scheme. And then secondly, that we note the annual summary of remuneration and expenses, which is attached as Appendix 2 to the report. So the scheme for adopting and the annual summary for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Any questions before, again, I look to your thumbs up to record the adopting and noting? Any questions? Thumbs up, please. Thumbs up, we're getting. So adopting and noting. So thank you. Caroline. We're now going to move to agenda item 10, equality and diversity policy and statement. And I'm assuming I'm going to go to Alan Rees, who looks like I am. Alan.
Yeah, thanks very much, Roger. So this report is doing a couple of things. Formally, there are a couple of decisions to take in it, which I will mention. The first is the approval of the attached equality and diversity policy and statement, which is an annual requirement, and that's attached to the paper. The second is to appoint Kate Hainsworth to continue in the position of LEP diversity champion. But in addition to that, the equality diversity statement and policy requires that the board receives a report every year about the LEP's activities on equality and diversity. And I think it's been a year in which I think we have made a lot of progress, but at the same time we need to go further and we need to go faster. And this is a particular area of focus within the LEP and the Combined Authority at the moment. So there's been quite a bit of progress. So firstly, in terms of the composition of the board, as you all know, there was a substantial effort to ensure that the membership of the board is diverse and representative, and in particular that the nationally laid down targets around representation were met early, which they have been. The second thing is the changes that have taken place within the assurance framework. So we've now got an inclusive growth framework, which was adopted by the LEP and the Combined Authority earlier in the year, which sets out how inclusive growth should be fully embedded to ensure that all our funding interventions drive inclusive outcomes and equality. And I think that's highly relevant for the conversation about the committee membership. We are embedding inclusion and the narrowing of inequality in the objectives of all of the committees. The second thing is in the framework is recognizing the key role that the third sector plays in ensuring an inclusive economic recovery. It's crucial that we are measuring progress in this area, so we have adopted an indicator set which is designed around measuring inclusive growth, and that has been adopted as well by the Combined Authority and the LEP, and we are going to be using that to report progress on an annual basis and be publishing that publicly. And we've also developed a series of propositions around specific interventions related to inclusive growth, which we'll be bringing forward. So things like a good work standard or employment charter as one example. So there's a set of kind of policy issues there. The next thing is around learning and development, where we have increased the training that is available both inside the organisation and for board members. So board members have been invited to attend equality and diversity training, and we also had a particular session for the inclusive growth panel on unconscious bias, which I think was well received and was a good session. The senior leadership team within the organisation has also recently had its own session on how we can be better at leading in this space. We've also, with regard to the evidence base, we have been improving how the evidence that we have underpins our work on inclusive growth, equality and diversity, and ensuring that, as far as possible, the data that we have that is informing our policies and our performance properly reflects equality, diversity and inclusion. And we've also raised some issues nationally. There was a consultation nationally from the Office of National Statistics about its data in this area, and we felt that it was currently not as good as it should be. So we submitted a consultation response to set out how it could be improved. Finally, internally within the organisation, some of the changes that we have made. So we have increased our opportunities for staff to come together to discuss these issues and promote and recommend changes to the way that the organisation runs to improve its approach to equality, diversity and inclusion. So, for example, we have an internal intranet site on our work on this, which shares information with people and provides learning resources. Secondly, we've established a Black, Asian and minority ethnic network group of officers that is helping the organisation to improve and learn about issues relating to race and diversity and so on. We've also established a gender equality group, which has been particularly influential in raising the disproportionate impact of the pandemic upon female members of staff, and that led to genuine change within the organisation and the flexible working arrangements that have been in place during the pandemic. And we are about to establish a sexual orientation group, LGBTQIA+ group, to bring staff together and support staff who, not just staff who identify as LGBTQIA+, but also allies as well. We have further enhanced the role that I play internally as the senior leadership team diversity champion. So I attend all of these groups and support them, and we are also improving our compliance with the public sector equality duty and ensuring that, as well as meeting our kind of fundamental legal obligations, we're actually we are getting better at embedding lived experience and community engagement in the development of our policies, programs and interventions. So apologies for the rather long commentary on that paper, but I do feel it's a year in which, whilst we have to go further and faster, we have made a good degree of progress over the last 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Does anybody want to raise any questions or comments on that before I go to the recommendations in a moment? Kate Hainsworth and Shirley Congdon, and whether Peter wanted to add anything, no requirement, Peter, but by all means do so. Kate first.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Alan, for running us through the paper. And it's great to see the progress that's been made. It's extremely welcomed. I think whether or not I get re-elected as diversity champion or not, I do have some concerns with regard to the connection between us as a board and the progress that is being reported here. For instance, there are some of the concerns that I know I've raised a number of times with regard to the dissolution of the Inclusive Growth Panel had also affected that sense of taking advice and including the voices of those with lived experience, which you've just described so well. But in terms of the actions of what's happened, what we're effectively doing is removing those voices from the committees and from the primary focus. Now, I totally get what Ben says and everybody says about the enormous amount of work that everybody's having to do at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I completely understand that, and I'm very patient with that. But I think there's also I wouldn't be doing the job of champion at all if I didn't say, hang on, we need to make this work better, and we need to include those voices, because inclusion is actually at the heart of this point. I think there's a lot of great stuff in here, and I'm the first to celebrate it. But I think things like the policy, which at the moment is called the Equality and Diversity Policy. There may be reasons around that, but a lot of us have been working around the term equity to ensure that equity is something that is given primary focus, and ensuring that that word inclusion is also part of the policy. And you know, again, I'm really, really happy to work with people, but at the moment, I don't feel there has been that close communication or use, if you like, of those of us who do have some experience in this area. And I'm not just speaking for myself. I know there are others around the board with a huge amount of experience in this area, and we'd love to be involved. And in a sense, that was behind my question earlier, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I personally know, we all know how inappropriately passionate you are about this, and I think for me, Alan may want to respond, but importantly, take away. And let's make sure that we try to make sure it's as interleaved or interwoven as best we can, but always with a mindset that we will have to iterate improvement rather than perhaps wholesale change. But let's do that piece of work. Shirley, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it was really sort of a similar point to what Kurt made, really. It's just about the board's, I suppose, value-led position on inclusion, and how we keep sighted and strategically focused on the inclusive growth agenda, and how the board can, you know, drive and check what's going on. So I really, really value the inclusive growth framework, but it would be really interesting, and I may have been at a meeting where this was presented, for us to see it and understand how we will be receiving reports which demonstrate we're making progress against the within the framework, and how we will therefore be able to, you know, drive further inclusive growth, because growth is important, but if it's not inclusive, it won't deliver what we want to. As Roger, I know that's what you're trying to get us to.
Sure, it's a good challenge, and I guess this comes back to the availability of an appropriate dashboard so we can actually monitor as well as challenge progress. I don't know whether you want to comment, Alan. If you do, by all means, come in before perhaps we'll move to the recommendations. Alan.
No, thanks, and I totally, I really appreciate the feedback, and I'm well aware that we need to do things, that we can do things better. That we're also on a journey. So there are. So I know that as we move forward with the devolution deal, and we're developing the proposals that come in for how we use that funding, future programs, and so on, the design of those needs to be done in a way which properly involves people with lived experience and is designed in an inclusive way, in a way that is better than perhaps we have done some things beforehand. Secondly, on the point of the indicators that I was describing is probably what helps with Shirley's point, which is that we have identified as part of the inclusive growth framework a series of indicators for across the region, broken down by area, which can be presented spatially as well, many of them, which will help to show progress over time. Now, clearly there are some challenges with that, because of showing what's the link between a particular intervention by the LEP and the actual change on the ground. And therefore, it isn't just a case of looking at that. It's also about, when we are designing our programs, ensuring that the evaluation monitoring of those programs and the impact that they are having has equality, diversity, and inclusion kind of measures within that. So if something is designed to help narrow a particular inequality or support a particular community, then clearly that needs to be built into the way that we evaluate and report on it. And that is fully the intention going forward. But obviously something that that we collectively will want to Kate's point, seek the experience and knowledge of colleagues on the board in designing.
Thank you, Alan. Shirley, your hand's still up. Is that a metaphorical old hand or a new hand?
Yeah, it's an old one, but I do think if we really focused on this, we could be leading, we could lead this agenda if we really put our efforts behind it. And, you know, I know a lot of the universities would be willing to get involved in the design of any framework if it's not yet fully complete.
Thank you for that offer. Well, you know, that for me, recognising I'm about to start my last year, it would, yes, I know you're there, should be. I'm going to bring you in a minute. I think it would be one of the important legacies that I would hope to leave. But before I bring Shabir Pandoran, Amir, you wanted a question. I'll go to you, Shabir, as the current chair of that panel. Amir.
Brilliant, thanks. Yeah, I just was going to say that I do endorse what Kate was saying about the fact that the loss of this panel does have implications, and I think it does. It's also about how it's perceived, and I think that, you know, there is, I believe, sort of a growing segment of sort of cynicism within, I would say, certainly within the Asian business community. And, you know, Roger, you very kindly took part in the webinar that we did, and I think you can sense from some of the questions that were coming in from that audience that that there's a view that, you know, they are not benefiting. And when, you know, if we are going to go down this route, which I understand the reason behind it, and I'm not necessarily against that, but I just want, the question was really whether we can have different mechanisms that allow us to gain insight. So when, for example, we look at business surveys and we say 1,500 businesses have been interviewed and these are the outcomes, how do we know which 1,500 businesses have been interviewed, and how do we then, you know, do our policies that back that? So I'm sort of really interested in what the mechanics are that then capture that sort of diverse opinion, and I just wondered what we could do to try and strengthen that sort of understanding of what's going on, to try and capture those viewpoints.
Okay, Amir, did you want to respond, or shall I go to Amir, Alan? Sorry, go to Shabir.
Can I suggest you go to Shabir and then I'll pick up the following.
Shabir, welcome.
Yeah, Roger, thanks very much. I'll just start off by saying that you probably all know that there's a by-election that's taking place in Buckingham Spen, and we've got 16 candidates, all colours, all persuasions, and there's one common theme that's running through all of them in terms of how they actually try and reconnect to communities. And although this is more of a political point, but it's not a party political point, I think it's the state of our politics, locally, nationally, and probably internationally as well. That's why I'm actually quite heartened that we're actually talking about inclusive growth, because this is definitely unfinished business, and it's how we actually not just bolt this on to what we're doing, but how we actually make this part of the heart and soul of what we do. And I'm really pleased, and I'm very clear that this is really unfinished business, because everybody who's worked on this agenda for the last few years, both members, elected private sector, and also officers, are actually fully committed behind this. And I think we just need to rethink how we get that proper representation, and give it some teeth in terms of the champions we have. And I think just looking across and hearing from the last few meetings, I think we've all become champions in inclusive growth, and I think we do really get this agenda. And you know, to get things right, we have to really make sure that, you know, we actually come back very, very quickly in terms of how we can actually, you know, give it some teeth, because otherwise we're going to miss a trick. You know, the data that's coming out from government in terms of recovery, it is speeding up, and it is good news. It's better than what we expected. But at the same time, what I don't want to do is the same old. We need to actually grip this. So we can't solve it now, but I think we need to very, very quickly come back and actually design something, whatever it is, to make sure that, you know, we carry that momentum and make that real difference. Thanks, Roger.
Yeah, I think you make a very powerful point. This is about how to ensure mainstream rather than adjunct to our overarching agenda. Tom, would you like to come in? I'm going to go to Mandy before perhaps we'll come to the recommendations. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. It's been a really good discussion. And I mean, I've been working on what you might call inclusive growth for too many years. And I think this is the most diverse board that I've seen during that decades. So we actually have a tremendous opportunity here to take advantage of that. And although in some ways you can sometimes feel like structural changes like this are symbolic, and they are, if you make sure that the way you're working sort of accounts for that concern and almost pushes it the other way, then I think, I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. But I do think we've got to reflect on, what's been said and try and respond to that. I mean, this board could be the inclusive growth driver, is another way to look at it in the system. And the way this board works and the way that we try and capitalise on the diversity, and I think, as Shabir has said, a genuine view right across the board that we've got to connect better. Let's take that away and run with it and see what we can do. There's lots of experience in the councils, from elected members particularly, I would say, but also from officers and I know others in other organisations, where we can think about how we move this forward next, because there will still be, however diverse we make boards and however many boards we set up, there are still too many people who feel disconnected and who are disconnected. So the reality is the outcome that we want is really what we should be looking at.
That's really helpful, Tom. Thank you. And quite an interesting challenge about whether, about the role of this board as a whole rather than each subplots of it. Perhaps I will reflect upon that. Mandy, I think you wanted to come in and make a point, Mandy.
Yeah, I think the point that Amir made about perception is really important. So it's not just the perception of what we're doing, it's the perception of believing that we're doing everything we can. So having facts and figures on a dashboard is absolutely critical. Involving the people who are disconnected in some way is really important, because without a key strategy, some metrics against it, and a level of measurement of engagement around it, then it doesn't matter how much we perceive we're working hard at it, it won't make any difference. So I think it's critical that we look at perception as a two-way street.
Yeah, I think there's some challenge around what we might want to move, how we might want to move the dial in a year, and how we might want to move the dials in 10 years, and plotting that journey going forward. So thank you for all those contributions. It'll be interesting when we get to the public question time. The importance of this is in one of the questions that has been posed to us. So if everybody's happy for us to move on, can I just make a point? We'll take some of the typographical errors of Appendix 2 on page 139 offline. They're just small things, but I think important things to some people. Can I take people to the recommendations in para 10 on page 134? And hang on, Alan, you wanted to come?
Sorry, Roger. I'd intended to respond on Amir's point.
Oh, okay.
Apologies
sorry.
that you made
Forgive me.
No, it's fine. It was the point that in particular was about. Mandy's added to it as well, and certainly, we do run a number of surveys, like the business surveys and others, and we have a wealth of research and intelligence within the organisation that we are continually adding to. And I fully recognise that one of the things we need to make sure that we are doing is when we are commissioning that research and intelligence and then using it, is that we are putting ourselves in a position where we're able to answer the questions that Amir has just asked. And I think that historically that's been partial, and it's certainly something that we need to improve going forward. So I just wanted to acknowledge that point.
Okay. Thank you for that. So with that, are we happy, as I've directed to people, to the noting and the approvals on para 10, page 134? You're happy to give them the thumbs up? I'll just look and see. We've got some thumbs up. We've got some thumbs up. Yes, thank you for that. I think we're now going to agenda item 11, the Scrutiny Annual Report 2021, and statutory guidance. I'm assuming this might be you, Ben, rather than... Oh, no, it's Angela. Angela, over to you. one time I thought it might be you and then decided I perhaps wouldn't come to you. It is you, so forgive me.
No worries, keeping you on your toes. Yeah, you've got in front of you here at this item the annual scrutiny report, which is undertaken by the Overview Scrutiny Committee each year. It's going to the Combined Authority later this month. You have it here in front of you today. So the appendix sets out some of the highlights of the work that the committee has undertaken during the year, with a summary on it's page, find it again, on page 154 of the pack, setting out what they covered at each of their meetings. You'll see there's been quite a focus in the year on the work happening on the COVID recovery, also on the mayoral devolution and the preparations for becoming a mayoral combined authority. So there's a number of findings set out in the report, and some of the feedback they have and some of the initial thoughts for the coming year. One of the pieces of work they did do during the year was looking at the scrutiny arrangements, how they worked and what might work going forward for a newer organisation. And as a result of that work and some further work through the Combined Authority, there is a proposal agreed in principle, which will come forward to the annual meeting to establish 3 scrutiny committees going forward to ensure there is both an opportunity for more engagement and more members to be engaged in it and be able to cover the wider breadth of activities that the Combined Authority and LEP are undertaking. So I think the new committees, there will be 3 of them, will be setting over the course of the year their work plan. As always, they have full access to everything across all the activities of the Combined Authority and the LEP. And some of you may recall they have looked, for example, at business loans and an example how inclusivity is built into the business grants that we have been able to award. So we'll keep you abreast of any work going on that impacts on some of the LEP priorities, and bring that back through future meetings in the corporate performance report. But for today, this report is simply for noting and information. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And as I said, we'll just note that, and a few thumbs up will just perhaps confirm that we're noting it. Thank you very much. Calendar of meetings. I guess it's self-evident, isn't it, really, Angela? But over to you.
It is. Yeah, very briefly to conclude many of the annual meeting items here. The calendar of meetings is attached. It's setting out the dates for the LEP board, also for the other committees. Also, hopefully we've done our best to set them around the other commitments. Very, very difficult given the interests of all the members and the other meetings that are taking place. But there for information, they will all be sent out after the confirmation of appointments at the Combined Authority annual meeting in terms of the committees. And I think to pick up on your point at the start of the meeting, Chair, we are hoping that at some point in the coming year, we are able to move towards holding these meetings in person. We are slightly constrained by the work still ongoing in our main building, but we are looking at other options to try and ensure that both the boards and the panels can come together in person, depending on further progress with lifting of government restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, it was interesting having the first of the WIC meetings in person, the investment committee yesterday, and it is a challenge to keep with all the regulations and all the rest of it. But anyway, let's see. And before I go to just seeking approval, did you raise a hand, Mark, or have you now just put a note in? Because I must have missed it.
And I just to not interrupt the flow of the meeting, I just put it in the chat. Now I have interrupted the flow of the meeting. My small question was, I've just been reflecting on the comments of the previous section on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in particular, Kate as our sort of diversity champion and the points she made. And I just wonder whether this could be something that we explicitly recommend to the scrutiny committee to take a look at as their work plan for the forthcoming year.
I'm happy to feed that back to the committee. I will be in the first meeting looking at their work plan. So I'll happily feed that back for you.
Thank you, Mark. Good suggestion. So going back to the calendar of meetings, we're asked to approve this. subject to all of those challenges that Andrew just mentioned, facing all of us in terms of attendance, are we happy to approve this calendar of meetings for next annual period? Thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving to agenda item 13, which is the public question time, which I'm going to effectively chair, and to help colleagues and in the interest of time, we'll read out the questions that we've pulled together. As part of the Strengthened Local Enterprise Partnerships Review taken by government some time ago, we were required to hold an annual meeting at which, amongst other things, the public have the opportunity to ask questions of the LEP board. And in keeping with our prior approach, we have canvassed widely. A number of us have used our own channels, whether it be LinkedIn or otherwise, to say, look, ask the LEP, and thank you to colleagues who've promoted it as well. I can think of Amir, and I can think of Kamran, and there'll be others, and forgive me, I'm not going to mention everybody, but to make sure that that opportunity has been available to the public of the wider city region. And we had a number of questions, and both those that we don't answer and those that we do answer today, we intend to publish a full list of written answers, I think by the 19th of June, if I remember correctly, and perhaps Caroline or somebody will correct me if I've got that wrong, but certainly in pretty short order after this meeting. So I'm going to go, as I say, I'll read the questions out, and I'll also share who's going to answer them, and then and they've obviously been forewarned. So the first question we're going to address, which will be answered in actually in two parts, firstly by Kate Ainsworth and then secondly by Cameron Rashid, is and it's prescient based on the conversation we've just had. How has the LEP implemented equality, diversity and inclusion on its board and in its staff and its grants distribution? How is the LEP supporting inclusive growth? So I'm going to hand to, as I say, to Kate first, who will deal with part one, and Cameron, who will deal with the inclusive growth part two. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you. And thanks to whoever asked this question. It's a really great question. Obviously, it's got 4 parts, so there's quite a lot of bits to it. So I'm going to cover a few bits as diversity champion, and Cameron, as fellow board member, is going to cover some other bits. I think it's fair to say, and hopefully if they're watching this or if it's being recorded, it will be noted that we do have a robust conversation around equity, diversity and inclusion at most board meetings. And that's because the LEP is committed to achieving that equality of opportunity in everything we do. And as has been also noted, the LEP board is the most diverse we've ever had, with members from a variety of backgrounds, private sector, arts, social enterprise, academia, management, consulting, but more importantly, difference in gender, difference in ethnic background, difference in in age. And I think that trend, which has conveniently also been continued by the mayor and deputy mayor, is hugely welcomed. And I think it's absolute credit to colleagues how much work has been put in over the last few years to ensure that that direction of travel is followed. As has also been noted today, it is a journey, and it's a journey that's not finished. Probably never will be, but I definitely think we've got some miles to cover. And while we're thrilled that we are getting towards a equity across gender in terms of the board, there is still some way to go. And I feel that very strongly in terms of the role that I've been entrusted as diversity champion. I do think that there is a substantial piece of work to be done around ensuring there is equity of voice and equity of opportunity, and we certainly take that very, very seriously. Eligibility for grants varies. Sometimes it's restricted by criteria set by the government. and to aid transparency, the details of any funded projects are published on our website. The area that I've been most involved in outside of board meetings has been around inclusive growth, and I've been really impressed with the way that's worked, ably chaired by Councillor Pandor, Shabir Pandor. But again, there's still a long way to go. And I think it's really important that the momentum that's been achieved through that crucial work around inclusive growth, which is a key part of the question, can be supported in future years. The two new frameworks that have been covered in this board paper talk about frameworks to guide future activity and talk about tackling some of the most hard-rooted and urgent long-term challenges that are faced by our region. And talking about is good as long as it leads to action. And that's the bit that I think we as a board and as a combined authority, because we work together so closely, it's absolutely crucial that we get right. This city region is one of the most excitingly diverse in the country, and our diversity is our strength. It isn't just about colour of people's skin or the sound of the accent that they use or the voice that they are able to raise, but diversity goes through everything we do, every business, every training opportunity, every chance of a job, everybody's lives. And it's crucial that this city region has to put that front and centre of the work that we do. I'm sounding a little bit like a soapbox, and I am not a politician. In terms of the inclusive growth framework, we've made big commitments. We've made commitments to measure things. We've also made commitments to invest in communities in a way that we haven't before, talking about promoting good work in business. But I think importantly, that involving of community voices within the work of the LEP is the way forward. And I really hope that in answer to that question, that our ambition is clear. We've heard it from our chair today, that ambition, that's a massively motivating factor, I know, for my colleagues across the board. And that's really heartening to know and to build upon. And I've already said it, but I think more than just words, we should be looking now to in the opportunity that the mayoral authority provides us with the opportunity to put real action into place. And I really hope that the visibility of the diversity across this board will become actual experiences of people across West Yorkshire. And I know Cameron's particularly going to pick up on the opportunities for business and other things as well. Cameron, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Cameron.
Thank you, Kate and Roger. I will keep mine brief. I think there's a lot of points that have been covered by Kate there. I want to start off by reiterating the point that we do have, I think, on the record, the most diverse LEP board in the country. And, you know, I joined the board last February. My first meeting was virtual, and ever since we've had all our virtual meetings. And people like Cully, myself, Heather, Shirley have all been involved. You know, we were on the last round of appointments to this board. And I think that just demonstrates the recognition that the existing board had to kind of make sure that we had inclusion. We did represent the district. It wasn't about having one of each, but it's what makes up our region and making sure that's reflected on the board. You know, joining a board during a pandemic is difficult. You know, we've had other priorities, we've had other considerations to make. And I think diversity and inclusion have still remained front and center for the board, but yet, you know, trying to translate that into action and making the change during a pandemic is difficult, because I hope many people can understand that, however, this is extremely important, but kind of dealing with the impact of the pandemic on businesses has probably trumped to some extent. I think the, you know, recent election of a regional mayor, the first female in the country, I think that demonstrates the region's appetite, you know, for diversity. And, you know, the deputy regional mayor is also a woman, I think adds to the recognition of this board and how the region is prioritising diversity. But there's a couple of things I want to come on to, which I think demonstrate how we have put diversity front and centre. So I know Amir earlier on mentioned that he's running a business support programme here in Bradford, which Roger spoke at, for South Asian businesses. Now, you know, for Roger to take the time out, it has been supported by both the Bradford Local Authority, but also the LEP. Again, it's kind of bridging that gap and making sure that the conversation is starting. I think another recognition is what just happened earlier on in today's board meeting. I think this board allows us to challenge and to have these difficult conversations. And the first thing for diversity is that if we're going to be equitable, if we're going to be diverse and inclusive, we've got to provide the space for different voices and different opinions to be able to have a safe space to contribute. And I think that's happening. And the fact that we're discussing this now, and I think it'll continue to happen. And, you know, I know that there's an imminent appointment of a diversity champion that's going to happen as well, which will, again, contribute to this agenda. Are we where we want to be? No, we're not. Have we got a long way to go? Yes, we have. Is the appetite there? Absolutely it is. I think, is the commitment there? Absolutely it is. I think, you know, to use a little analogy, which I use often, is some things, small organizations are like speedboats. You can change direction very quickly. Others, like the LEP, are more like steamliners. They carry a lot more influence. They carry a lot more people, and the impact of their decisions impact a lot more people. And they're more like steamliners, which take time to change direction. But I think the appetite's there, and I am confident within the coming years that we will definitely see a lot more impact for them communities that feel that they may be left behind. I hope that's useful.
Thank you, Cameron. And let me be absolutely clear in my respect, as I've said many times before, but forgive me, because it may even sound a tad evangelical. It's not meant to. The eradication of poverty and deprivation for current and future generations across the city region is the prize. And all our efforts, in my view, are driven to that. The discussions we've had have been phenomenal today. It's how we implement, and having that constructive challenge from people like Kate and others to the questioner is helpful to that inclusive debate towards that agenda. So thank you for that. So I'm going to move now to the second question, which Shirley Congdon is going to answer. And the question is, what support is there for students who are needing jobs post-graduation? Shirley.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. So this is a really, really important question. We all know that over the last 14 months, there's been a very challenging situation for graduates, which is why the universities working with the LEP and business partners have been taking steps to provide much more practical support for graduates entering the worlds of work. So I'm going to just give a few examples that universities have been doing in conjunction with the LEP, and then a specific example about future goals. So universities across West Yorkshire, including my own Bradford, have made significant inroads to work with the Kickstart programme, and this is available for graduates as long as they're between 16 and 24. At our university, we've got about 70 places for people to engage in Kickstart programmes. All universities in West Yorkshire working with the LEP are supporting dedicated career and advisory services for graduates, which are targeting them, matching them up with business and enterprise opportunities. An example from the University of Leeds, where there's a central course run by their careers unit, which is attached to the government skills toolkit, digital education service, and it's delivered on Future Learn, and this helps graduates get new skills and new jobs. Yorkshire's done better than most regions in retaining graduates in work in the region, but we definitely realise we still have got a situation where we need more jobs for graduates currently. But these interventions will support this. The Reboot programme, which is supported by the LEP and run by Leeds Trinity and the West Yorkshire Consortium of Colleges, provides free courses if people are eligible. Over 18, they can be graduates. And if they live in Bradford, Calderdale, Craven, Harrogate, Kirkleeds or Leeds, and even beyond, they can get free courses in digital engineering, construction, TV production and creative. The LEP Future Goals incentive is really important to mention, which provides support and inspiration for people of all ages, graduates or otherwise, to help them think about career paths, the right skills, possibly changing direction. Even if they have graduated, they might be thinking about digital, maybe as opposed to something that might have been more sort of truly maybe in something like big data, for example. And it maps areas where we've got skill shortages in our area, for example, manufacturing, engineering, construction, digital, health and creative industries. So this is helping to point graduates to where we've got opportunities where there's skill shortages. And also wanted to finally mention that working with businesses, the LEP's business support underpins this work by helping graduates even to think about higher level apprenticeships, again, the Kickstart scheme, and pointing them in the area of enterprise opportunities working with businesses themselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Shirley. I'm now going to go to the third question, which I think Mandy Ridyard's going to address on the topic of COVID. What have you done for local businesses? What is the LEP doing to aid recovery going forwards? Mandy.
Thanks, Roger. That's a really important question. It's important to note that the key roles of the LEP are to provide that strategic leadership, to develop strategy and policy aimed at meeting current and future needs of the economy, and to unlock the huge potential in the region by helping businesses grow and develop, and to stimulate growth that creates jobs and prosperity for everyone. In terms of what we've actually done, the LEP has supported businesses throughout the pandemic, and that's been in two ways, through the Business Support Service and through the Employment Hub. The Business Support Service gives the businesses the opportunity to benefit from investment, so to purchase essential equipment with that investment, to develop new products and processes, and to save money on their energy bills. And by the end of 2020, the Business Support Service has helped over 3,500 businesses, many of those receiving intensive support by way of grants or one-to-one advice. It also signposted business-to-business support grants available through our partner local authorities. The Employment Hub has so far supported 1,900 businesses with advice on furlough and recruitment during the pandemic. But that's not all. At the start of the pandemic, the Combined Authority also convened the West Yorkshire Economic Recovery Board, and that brought together civic and business leaders from across the region to lead West Yorkshire out of the pandemic. The board produced a draft plan to build on the region's strengths and to put in place measures to support jobs. And this draft plan identifies 4 distinctive West Yorkshire propositions that can deliver not just for our region's economy, but also make a significant contribution to the UK economy as a whole. Each proposition in that plan includes both an offer and an ask to government. So the 4 key things are, firstly, health innovation with an ask of 60 million, building on the region's strengths in devices, data and diagnostics, to unlock the industry collaboration skills and a globally positioned Act Early institution on disease prevention. The second one is about lives being transformed by digital tech, with an ask of 159 million for the region. And that's to ensure no one is left behind in a digitally enabled future by driving the infrastructure that we need, the digital skills that we need, and the Made Smarter investment to support digital adoption in manufacturing, a key sector in our region. Thirdly, our transition to a net zero carbon resilient economy, absolutely critical, and a £192 million ask. And that's to support our net zero 2038 target, with unique industry strengths in low carbon transport, clean agri-tech, construction and our circular economy, and to deliver critical green and blue infrastructure and up to over 71,000 jobs. And with that, skills and training to help people into those low carbon opportunities. And finally, entrepreneurship, with an ask of 340 million focused on our diverse communities. We have an existing scale-up performance, and our MIT-REAP programme has high growth pre-starts to unleash an entrepreneurial revolution, transforming empty properties and supporting high growth potential startups. The Combined Authority continues to call on the government to commit to support these plans for recovery. we really want to make this happen.
Thank you, Mandy. And indeed, yesterday at the investment committee, we approved funding to further advance the net zero health innovation, and a significant amount of funding to get the entrepreneurship program moving beyond what was the MIT REAP journey. So we're on with that. So thank you for that, Mandy. A question that Andrew Wright is going to address: how is the LEP supporting innovation in the region? Obviously building on that entrepreneurship point. Andrew.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Roger. Yeah, it's good to have a chance to talk about the work that the LEP has been doing on innovation. It's been a particularly strong focus, I think, over the last year. We've recently signed off a new innovation strategy, and for those who want to know the detail of what's been going on, as I say, there's quite a lot of it. There is the innovation strategy that you can find on the net. It identifies the 12 priority areas that we're working in, and with increased emphasis on inclusion and diversity, as you'd expect. And we're now getting into the implementation mode of those 12 priorities. I'll just highlight a few, though, to give a more sort of practical flavour of what's going on. The package of support for entrepreneurs that Roger just referred to was agreed this week, and a part of that is going to be aimed at innovation-driven enterprises, or IDEs as we call them. So this is people who have ideas and who want to set up a company who maybe don't have the wherewithal or the experience to do that well, and offering them support at what we call the pre-startup stage. And it's a specific program which is exciting because unusually it offers about 100 hours of support. It's a lot deeper and better support than many of the incubator type programs that are often done around the rest of the country. We believe we've got something special there, and something that has piloted well. I'm delighted that we've got a significant chunk of money now to take that forward over the coming period. So that's for new businesses. For existing businesses, picking up Shirley's point about the link between our excellent FE institutions and HE institutions in the region and existing businesses, we've formed a West Yorkshire Innovation Network, which is a group of people who meet regularly and talk about how we can improve the innovation support available to businesses. It includes obviously people from businesses itself, but also people from HE and other expert bodies who can bring to bear on that and to improve our support that we do still further. The Innovation Festival that was run in March was a particular highlight. It's the first of its kind for the region. It was obviously originally intended to be in person, but it went online. Despite that, though, was a notable success with hundreds of businesses involved, highlighting the innovative small businesses that we have in the region, and promoting the support that some of them have been able to access, and hopefully encouraging others to do so. The sorts of numbers that we got on engagement in that festival were comparable to some of the really big name festivals that you hear about from California. So it was, considering it was a first effort, it really was a very special event, and something that we're looking forward to building on, making even stronger, perhaps in person, possibly in 2022. Our innovation program, the sort of flagship one, is Connecting Innovation. So we have a group of growth managers who are all around the region, 20 plus people who are available to talk to any business that wants to access help from the LEP or the Combined Authority. 4 of those are specifically innovation growth managers, and they are particularly expert on creating links between business and what we have in the higher education sector. They know the universities well, they know how to make the links. So if anybody watching this is interested in how they might make a start in finding support for an innovative idea that they've got, you could do no better than starting with our Connect Innovation Advisor. Again, you'll find the connection on the website there as to how to get in touch with that. And that will give you individual advice about the particular thing. Maybe you've got a product you want to develop, or maybe you've got a new business idea. We can put you in touch with some of the right people in the universities, or indeed other resources that are around the region. The last thing that I'll mention, Roger just touched on it at the end of his remarks there. We're particularly supporting the health tech agenda in the region. Convening partners at the moment to coordinate activity for that particular sector, already strong and particularly innovative. And the idea will be to maximize the impact of the significant assets that we have in that area, making sure that the growth and well-being outcomes for the region are spectacular, as we know they can be. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to echo that point about those assets, not, you know, and just to illustrate too, the recent announcement from LabCorp of their significant investment to create a UK Centre of Excellence for clinical trials in our region, the Futures Hospital Programme, just to name a couple, let alone some of the global corporates that operate in our region, and see it as an opportunity for further enhancement of their business aims. So a lot to be thankful for, but also a lot of work to do. So thank you, Andrew, for that. Next question, which Amir Hussein's going to seek to address is, what has the LEP been doing to support businesses with the challenges and changes that Brexit has created? It did say, what have you been doing, Amir, but I thought that was a bit unfair to put it all on your shoulders. So I've slightly altered the question, and hope the questioner, if they're listening, will forgive me that actually I don't personalise it, I generalise it to the LEP as a whole. Amir.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, and thank you for that clarification as well, Roger. I was going to just sort of say, following on from sort of Mandy and Andrew's comments, you can see that there's a broad range of support services that are in place for businesses. I think the question is quite pertinent in the sense that it sort of refers to the actual challenges and changes that have come about through Brexit. And I think to that end, it's probably worth sort of focusing on that particular aspect of the question. And I would say this has started really at the outset of when Brexit was first announced, and sort of some of the insights that were trying to be drawn. And Brexit at that stage was very much a sort of moving goalpost, and it was very unclear what it was looking like. But there was a lot of work being done around research, and there was a lot of work being done around what sort of insights were being given by other partner organisations. And that was trying to sort of create the context to be able to put in the right support services for when Brexit did, in effect, take place. So specifically, that kind of went on to create a programme of interventions, which were done with a number of partner organisations that were essentially contracted through the LEP, together with BAYS. And these were focusing on things like the transitional technical support, and even one-to-one advice for people when had specific scenarios that they needed to question. It was also around the documentation and trade-related documentation support. It was also around the idea of sort of the Mid-Yorkshire Chamber of Commerce and their support services that they were putting in place, again, to around that documentation issue. Squire Patton Boggs, they were commissioned to get involved in offering EU legal support, and there was also then EU transition webinars, and then there was also about internationalizing market activity and website webinars, and that resulted, that sort of program of activity resulted in 748 businesses being supported, which when we look at the total amount of investment in that was a really remarkable amount of output for the effort that went in. And I would say that also going on now, that there's the analysis into the situation and understanding the things that are impacting various sectors, and particularly some of the big organisations that we've got within the region. And so there's been a lot of insights and conversations happening at a one-to-one level with those organisations, but also with other organisations that have got those kinds of insights. So things around, sort of some of the key issues that are coming out of this are sort of the rules of origin, VAT, data compliance, tariff codes, intellectual property, travelling, and so on. And one of the things that's also been emerging is around employment and the issues that have arisen out of that. So that's kind of trying to respond to the issues as we're finding them now. And at the moment, until the end of June, Western and North Yorkshire businesses can access free support to go through the whole sort of myriad of things to do with the trading relationship, and that's through the enterprise growth solutions. And there's also various signpostings to other organisations such as the DIT that can also assist businesses. So there's a myriad of things, one, that are trying to understand what's going on in terms of the lived experiences of businesses and taking that information on board, and then trying to create responses that enable others and those businesses themselves to try and manage the situation better. But it is very much something that's moving all the time. And I think the pandemic has only sort of heightened all of the challenges that sort of occurred around it. But I think that there's an awful lot of things that are being put in place to respond to the challenges and the changes that have come about through Brexit.
Thank you, Amir. That was a real tour de force. Well done. Thank you for that. And to not quite our final question, which I'm going to let to Simon Pringle to address. And it's as follows: how are you making sure businesses help with the region's net zero ambition by 2038? If you want to do that in a number of series on Netflix, Simon, but I know you'll give us the healthy headlines.
I'll give you the healthy headlines, Roger, and thank you very much for the question whoever posed that. Yes, I mean, that's a big question, and it's a challenging one as well. I mean, we're trying to address a systems level issue here, aren't we? And engaging with business in seeking delivery on that is critical. It's tempting to jump straight to the programs that sort of relate to support and implementation. I will come to support in a moment, but what we've been trying to do is both lead in certain areas where appropriate, convene in other areas, and of course support. And so where we've been leading has been where it's required a sub-regional, regional focus, and really mapping out the potential decarbonisation pathways has been the key example of that. That needed to happen at LEP level. We've done that, and we've done it with the support and the consultation of various representatives and members of sectors that are key to the decarbonisation of this region: transport, built environment, some of the industrial sectors, and then of course into the rural economy and agriculture beyond. So there's been a definite leadership role in that respect, and I think I'm very excited to see how we can actually then start to use our convening power to really create a bit of an assembly or a coalition of the willing to start putting those strategies into action, because we can have as many policies as we want. What we really need now is implementation. That is going to require that collective effort. So the convening power, I think, is important. And we saw that working really effectively post-2015 floods in terms of where we rebuilt our blue-green infrastructure strategy. And that wasn't done just out of a sort of centralized think tanky way. That was done with a 100+ consultation exercise with representatives across the business and the wider community as well. And we're beginning to see the benefits of that really come through, both from a resilience point of view and also in terms of the way that people experience their day-to-day lives. So I think, you know, we're trying to lead where appropriate, we're trying to convene where appropriate, but we're also trying to bring support to bear as well. And some of those might sound ever so slightly trivial in the context of the, you know, of the climate emergency that we all recognize and we face, but we're doing some things that are direct and I think are creating localized impact. So for example, we're supporting businesses to be more energy efficient in a number of ways. So working with City Connect to offer bike-friendly business grants up to £5,000, as well as free advice to supporting businesses who are looking to encourage staff to cycle to work, and also working with the Travel Plan Network, who help to improve travel options for employees and offer discounts and free advice on sustainable transport options. We're also running a program, and for people who are interested, go look this up. It's called the Resource Efficient Business Program, REBIZ we call it, and that provides advice and financial support for small and medium-sized employers, and they're often the harder to engage, just because of the size and the capacity that they've got to engage with us on this agenda. So really trying to find a way of providing a combination of financial and advice-based support for more resource efficient and circular business models and practices. And through REBIZ, I think it's 148 businesses have received free resource efficiency audits and advice, and there's been 34 grants have been awarded as well. And that totals over £250,000. And we've also been able to leverage about 600,000 pounds of SME investment as well. So we forecast that will deliver around 1,000 tonnes of CO2 savings per annum from grant-fronted projects. relatively small in terms of comparison with infrastructure projects, but really important in bringing the SME community along with this journey. And also we have also provided advice and support around direct circular economy type work. So 19 businesses there have received an initial 2 days of consultancy support for free, funded by the LEP, and with 8 going on for a further 3 days of intensive support. And one of them has received a full package of support to develop their circular economy ideas in depth. So what we're trying to do is put our efforts where it creates the biggest impact, work out where the biggest levers are, and supporting the development of partners as well. And that goes both across the business community and also the not-for-profit and regulated and public space. And we can see some of the work that's emerging from collaborations between Yorkshire Water, the Environment Agency, National Trust, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, and they have created some tremendous impacts that have not entirely been convened through the LEP, but certainly the way that we've been approaching this agenda has helped bring those partnerships into life and deliver outcomes that otherwise wouldn't have happened. So that's what we're trying to do, and frankly, the more the merrier. So if you want to be part of it, get in touch one way or another, and we'll find a way of involving you.
Thank you, Simon. I think it's true to say through your leadership of the Green Economy panel that we've actually had some interventions that are firsts in terms of how to approach things, particularly the resource energy accelerator and other things. So thank you for that, Simon. And now to our final question, and it's a cultural one, and I'm delighted that Helen Featherstone's going to seek to answer it. How is the LEP helping the cultural sector, and in particular, those who have been hardest hit by the pandemic? Helen.
Yeah, well, I think all colleagues in the cultural sector will agree when I say that the cultural sector has obviously been incredibly hard hit by the pandemic, and indeed many colleagues are still closed, those who are running theatres. So the cultural sector is obviously very, very important in our region, to our economy, to support jobs and tourism, and to drive inclusive and sustainable growth, and obviously with regard to health and well-being as well. And the region has many strengths. It's really vibrant. We've talked a lot about its diversity today, and I think culture helps to celebrate that. And it's a welcoming and exciting place to be, as the new home of Channel 4. Obviously, Cully's left us, but with Leeds 2023 and Cameron's involvement in the bid for Bradford to be UK City of Culture in 2025, and our culture and creative places have even more to give. So prior to the crisis, the Combined Authority, in partnership with local authorities and the DCMS arm's length bodies, developed a cultural framework to underpin its work on developing the cultural sector in West Yorkshire. And this provides a route for engaging with the sector and aligning resources to capitalise on culture's ability to deliver prosperous, healthy, engaging and high quality places. The cultural framework also recognises the unique role of culture in reducing inequality, health and well-being, and helping to deliver carbon reduction and create a sustainable environment. So much of the aims of this during the pandemic obviously had to pivot to support our approach to the cultural sector in recovery, and the role that culture played, a predominant role in the development of our economic recovery plans. And I think all of the Leeds City region and the other authorities, it's really pleasing to see culture woven in all of their economic recovery plans, actually. So it's very much at the forefront of the whole of West Yorkshire's economic recovery. And this work will maximise opportunities for the sector to access the DCMS and the Arts Council Cultural Recovery funding, and indeed many have and continue to do so, and support and signposting cultural organisations to relevant existing opportunities and support. It also identifies opportunities to help local authorities deliver their cultural recovery plans. And I think in addition to this, we've several of the sort of business support grants have been referred to, but small firms in the creative sector could also access the COVID-19 recovery grants of up to £3,000, and they were for businesses to access support with their ICT equipment, external consultancy advice and business resilience. And in total, 1,114 grants were awarded with a combined value of around 2.8 million. And in addition, they could also access digital resilience vouchers of up to £5,000 for ICT equipment related to resilience and the pivoting of products and services. And 400 of those grants were awarded with a combined value of just over £1 million. Now, going back to the points we've raised already around the need for clearer data, we can't actually identify at this stage how many of those grants were accessed by the cultural and creative sector. However, we anecdotally know that there was a very good uptake from that sector. And so that's, I think, pleasing to hear that they were directly supported by those support schemes, as well as the kind of wider strategic support that the LEP is providing in terms of recovery and growth in the region.
Thank you, Helen. Indeed, a number of organisations in the region had fared very well in terms of the Cultural Recovery Fund. In fact, one I know well did particularly well, but others did too, showing the strength of what we have and the hence the importance about building upon it going forward. So thank you, Helen. As I said at the outset of this piece, the answers to those questions which we've shared on air, together with the others not addressed here, will be published. And I'm just looking to Alan just to confirm, I think by the 19th of June is our plan, so that we have addressed those which we received from members of the public. And on behalf of the board, thank you, Alan, can I thank all of those people for so doing, and encourage even more at this time next year. So thank you for that. That concludes the annual meeting. And I think we're going to move into other business. We're somewhere on the home straight. I had set myself a horizon to say we'll finish by 4:30, and I think there's every chance we will do that, if not a tad earlier, albeit recognising it's a long meeting. So COVID-19 update, which I was assuming Brian might deliver, but I don't think he's with us. So I'm just going to look to see who's going to do that. I don't know whether that's Henry Riggs is just joined us and he's about to do it. Well, very good. Henry, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. I'm going to start it off, and then I think Ian Smythe might come in afterwards. So yeah, I'll keep it brief because I know we've still got a lot to get through. But yeah, the start of the paper just sets out some of the support that's been put in place for businesses up to now to support with COVID-19, set out in the table at 2.3. There is a bit of a time lag on these figures, especially in terms of the grants that the local authorities have been doing a sterling job administering. So those figures will be significantly higher at this point in time. But we are getting on towards almost £1 billion of investment in grants coming through the local authorities when you consider the 500 million that was invested from April through to November, and then the figures in the table are from November through to now. So it's a really significant effort there, and the growth managers, the LEP's growth managers, have also played a key role in that, working within the local authority business support teams. I'd just say on that table as well, it's probably just worth updating that the peer learning project, the second phase of that, is now in delivery for this financial year. We're going to be working with over 130 SMEs to support through that programme, and it will be the Leeds University Business School that will be delivering that particular project, and are delivering it now. In terms of the employment and skills support, it's probably just worth updating the board to let them know that the procurement exercise for Reboot and Bootcamp has taken place, and we're currently in the standstill period. So very shortly we will be able to announce who the providers are in terms of that additional support for those critical employment and skills programmes. We're seeing continued high demand across business support and employment and skills support services. That's particularly been the case as some of the restrictions have been lifted, particularly the case with the Employment Hub programme. So we hope that that will continue as more of the restrictions are eased. So that is certainly a positive picture. And I'd probably just add, before I pass on to Ian, that we've referenced the Entrepreneurship programme, and it was great that it was all finally approved by the Investment Committee yesterday. That means we can press the button on our workstream 2, which is more of a mass market business startup support programme for anybody who's interested in setting up a business. We can provide them with some help, support and guidance to do that, irrespective of the growth potential or the sector, which has caused us some problems in the past with European money. We don't have those restrictions now, so we can support startups from any background and startups in any sector, and we'll be going out to tender for some support in that area next week.
Thank you, Henry. Just before I bring in Ian, does anybody want to ask any questions, make any comments? No need, but just in case. Oh, Councillor Hinchcliffe, Susan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just you mentioned the project up with Leeds University. I think it's based on the MIT REAP. Was that what you're referring to, Henry?
No, it's something different, this, Councillor Hinchcliffe. This is a peer learning support programme. We were given some funding from BASE to deliver that last year, and we went out to tender for a partner, and Leeds University Business School won that tender, and then we got some extra funding for this year, so it's gone back out to tender, and LUBS won that again.
Is that for the whole region then,
That is
for
West Yorkshire.
Region?
Yeah, it's for West Yorkshire.
So
yeah.
if you could just give us a breakdown, perhaps not now, but in future meetings, about which businesses are being supported and which areas are being supported by how much, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, of course we can do that. Yeah, I'll get that breakdown.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Henry. Peter, did you want to come in before I go over to Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I mean, this might be for Henry, it might be for Ian, but I mean, I think at this time we're seeing some really interesting and unusual things in the labour market, aren't we? With lots of concern about high levels of unemployment, people who've been made redundant, will they be able to get jobs, part-time jobs, the type of work that they want, but combined with employers really struggling to recruit in certain sectors, and not always in the sort of traditional high skill sectors either, but in high employment sectors like hospitality, for example. I was really interested in the perspective of private sector members, but also the officers about whether this is a sort of frictional mismatch. How much of it is overseas worker reduced number related? How much is sort of genuinely a sort of problem that is susceptible to skills interventions? Obviously, my role nationally in apprenticeships and traineeships. Obviously, really interested to hear about the reboot and boot camp procurement here, but just really interested to explore that, because it's certainly an important issue nationally.
Thank you, Peter. Ian.
Do I get the baton of answering Peter's incredibly difficult question? Okay. So I'll come back to that in a moment, Peter, in the context of the economic recovery plan. But just to finish off what Henry was saying, we were investment committee yesterday with the entrepreneurship package, the ladder of entrepreneur support that Henry referred to, but also the health tech proposition, which is to create a post within the combined authority to coordinate and help unlock industry collaboration in that key sector, which we identified in the economic recovery plan, and also the project to help build the net zero carbon pipeline, which is a critical part of our climate emergency approach and in preparation for COP26. So that brings, I think, takes us over a total of £25 million that in total the combined authority, off the back of the economic recovery plan, has committed to employment skills support, business support, and also other local partner support. So in terms of next steps, we're really conscious for all the reasons that Peter has outlined, as well as the ending of furlough in September, that we're going to need a third version of the economic recovery plan. It's our plan to do that. and we've been talking to the Mayor about that and how her new pledges interact with that. And the Mayor has received the baton from Councillor Hinchcliffe in terms of chairing the Economic Recovery Board, and has chaired her first meeting. And as I say, we're planning to have a new version of the plan in place to try and answer some of the questions that Peter is there, where it isn't clear how much of that is an economic recovery issue and how much is things like supply chain, labour supply issues around potentially EU exit and so on, and how much that's come out. So I'm afraid I don't have an answer, Peter, but we are going to look at the scenarios within the economic recovery plan to try and at least put some hypotheses together that we can then bring forward proposals to tackle.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for your questions. And just by way of, whilst we note the update, the recent news of the New Stations Fund for White Rose, the recent announcements on towns funds for Keighley and Dewsbury. I'm not sure whether there's any others, I might have missed some, but that's all very encouraging, particularly the Keighley one, where you're supposed to make a bid up to 25 million, but in true Bradford and its district style, they made a bid for just under 34 and were successful. So well done to them. We're going to move to economic reporting, and I know it's been a long meeting, but I think this is worthy of perhaps a little more time than previously, because I'm reminded, and Patrick's with us now, that in August of last year, attending a Bank of England event where, in the words of whatever he was in Dad's Army, we're all doomed. And I don't mean that unkindly on the Bank of England, but one of their scenarios suggested the UK economy might collapse by at least a fifth before perhaps V-shaping, K-shaping, or whatever shaping. It's going to be interesting to see how it is beginning to shape up, because some bits I pick up locally and nationally suggest there's a feeling of some optimism, also questions as to how long might things sustain. But so as to set the context and help us understand a little bit where we're going, over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Yeah, I think there is some basis for that degree of optimism. So in terms of running through some of the key headlines, I think probably just to sort of build on that, really. So what we know in terms of the latest intelligence from the Office for National Statistics through the Business Improvement and Conditions Survey suggests that in West Yorkshire, 84% of businesses were trading in early May. This is up from 70% in January. 10% of workers were on furlough. This had dropped from 17% in January, while 60% of those workers were in their usual workplace. And that was up from 47% in January. So I think, based upon some of the initial soundings from the ONS BICS survey, there's certainly room for some optimism. I think we have to recognise the economy is coming from a reasonably low base. But I think there is some degree of optimism out there across a broad basket of our economic indicators. I think that's also backed up by what we're seeing in the labour market. So, for instance, we are seeing that, for instance, vacancy levels are now running on average about 9% above their pre-pandemic levels, and I think that's quite positive. It's also, I think, worth reflecting on that return to workplaces. So the pattern that we're seeing in West Yorkshire is probably broadly similar to what we're seeing nationally, but possibly a little bit stronger. So that return to workplaces has been a little bit quicker and a little bit more rapid in West Yorkshire and areas like Manchester and indeed Tyne and Wear than compared to the national picture. I think also as well, what we're seeing in the labour market, we've seen a modest decline in claimant count, down by 1% in April from March. And this is, I think, positive. And I think it's more indicative, I think, of a recovery, I think, in the labour market, certainly in the short term, and obviously to what extent the change in any date for the 21st of June will have an impact on the labour market, we don't know. But I think the underlying sort of strength of the labour market at the moment is coming through in a broad range of data. Also, to mention to the board as well, we've obviously undertake every year an annual business survey. Now, this year we talked to just under 1,600 businesses, a representative sample of 1,600 businesses in West Yorkshire in February and March. And we focused particularly on those issues of recovery around COVID and Brexit, and there's some really interesting results coming from that. That's contained in the accompanying COVID Insights report, which the board have access to. But maybe just to reprise some of the key headlines from that. As you might imagine, the survey told us, and businesses reported to us, that last year had been very challenging, and I think that's probably an understatement. So 56% of businesses said that their overall performance had got worse last year compared to when we asked that question the year before, and only 14% said it had got better compared to 40% when we asked the question in early 2020. But I think, again, coming back to Roger's point on optimism, I think it's fair to say that when asked about the prospects for business this year, businesses are a lot more optimistic. So 45% of businesses expect their performance to improve this year, and that's higher than in any survey. We've undertaken this survey for the last 7 years, and it's the highest sort of reading we've had from the survey in terms of forward business sentiment. And probably acknowledging as well that probably it does reflect probably the low base that from which businesses are recovering. Just to back up the point on the general, I think improvement in the labour market. Businesses, when we were asked in the survey as well about their recruitment intentions, are also a lot more optimistic for this year in terms of their recruitment intentions. Briefly touching as well on what we obviously asked quite a few questions concerning the health crisis, and particularly how businesses had adapted to the health crisis and Brexit. And when we particularly focused in on questions around, for instance, home working and businesses' space and office requirements and what that might mean for this year, 13% of businesses said that the majority of the workforce was back in the office, and a further 51% of businesses said that their workforce, the remaining workforce, would be back in the office within 6 months. That's when we asked the question in February and March. So 2/3 of businesses in the sample thought that working patterns would look more normal within 6 months. Particularly interesting as well, we were clearly interested in what businesses thought were the key areas of investment for them, particularly as hopefully the economy improves this year. And one of the most interesting things that we gathered from the responses was that many businesses thought that the most important consideration for them this year was improving their productivity. So 50% of businesses thought that was their single highest priority, and this is more important than it was from before the pandemic. Other issues around IT, digital infrastructure, training and innovation are also top of the list in terms of priorities, for business recovery this year. And also, very briefly, lastly, just touching on what we know about that general trend of workforces returning to their normal workplaces. More than 90% of businesses, when asked in the survey about their current premises needs, said that they still need their current premise space. 75% said that the amount of space they will need as a business will not change. So I think there's a fairly, again, it's backing up that general trend that we're getting back from the survey responses, that the majority of businesses thought that the majority of their workforce would be back in their normal workplace this year. And that's obviously subject to the pattern of recovery with the virus. So hopefully, Roger, that sort of backs up the point you were making about a sort of a degree of optimism in the in the economy at the moment.
Indeed, and before I open up for any questions, just to highlight, if people haven't seen it, the recently published Ernst Young Attractiveness Survey, which deals with inward investment. And whilst Yorkshire and Humber as a whole, when it comes to number of projects over the past 12 months, is 6% down in volume terms as compared to the national decline of 12%. So half what's happened nationally. But the city region has held steady, and in the words of Ernst Young, not the words of Roger Marsh, the driving force of FDI for Yorkshire and Humber. So that's another reason for being, I think, a degree confident without any complacency. The other interesting fact to me is that when asked in 2019, where nearly 50% of investors, when asked where the most attractive destination was for investment, would have referenced London. But interestingly, in the period 2021, that's fallen to 25%. I'm not sure what to make of that, but that sounds, no disrespect to London, but that sounds like an interesting statistic for people at the centre to contemplate. But anyway, I agree with Patrick, and certainly conversations with some of the global professional services firms, of which I have some connectivity, suggests, and they are a barometer, that their levels of activity are at an all-time high. Their challenge is adequacy of resource to be able to deliver the quality of services. So pause there. Any questions or comments to Patrick? Joanna, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, just to really support the data that Patrick has just put forward there, I chaired the business communications group meeting yesterday, and there was a real sense of optimism amongst their members. The business sector seems to be really quite buoyant at the moment. Some of the main areas was reshoring was coming more to the forefront. We have a banking representative on there, and he actually said that defaults on business bounce back loans were much lower than anticipated, which shows the resilience of businesses within our area, and the strength and ability to innovate and survive really the difficult times that they've had, which is really positive. They also have said that there's a huge amount of increased activity going on, not necessarily at the moment producing greater revenue, but obviously the signs are going in the right direction. And the general consensus was manufacturing and construction industries were really busy. So all really positive and supports everything that Patrick just said. There are a few challenges though. Costs, freight, are all going up, and they're all having to really obviously manage overheads at the moment. Some real concerns about inflation and where that's going to go, and what direction that's going to go in. Export levels are not necessarily going up, which was anticipated. They're more levelling off, and some members were actually pulling out of the market due to the complexities with Brexit at the moment. Yeah, just generally a really positive picture, which is fantastic after such a difficult year. And I think it just backs up the data that Patrick's gathered there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. So we'll move swiftly on to corporate performance report. Angela will be somewhere. I'm looking to find Angela. I hope she's somewhere. Angela.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, final item here is the usual corporate performance report. So it runs through the usual topics around budget, risk, update on performance through the KPIs, risk and overview scrutiny. We have this time included the information on capital spend, in the absence of the other reports coming through from the committee. So there's further information in here about growth deal progress, and noting that we have just about reached the end of the journey on spending the growth deal money, although there's still opportunities to come in terms of the collecting up all the outputs, which follow after we've spent all the money. There's a link in here to the LEP financial statement, which we are required to provide as part of the delivery program for the LEP, and we've produced that in conjunction, in parallel with the combined authority draft accounts. So they are out as unaudited versions at this stage. There are no decisions from this report. It is simply information to note, and happy to take any questions on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Angela. And just to add to that, we will hopefully be bringing to this board the impact report of that, those many hundreds of millions of public money we've deployed, and the leverage that has been achieved. And I think we'll be pleasantly surprised about the outcome. The other thing, the other side of it, which Patrick knows, it'll also give a sense of that cocktail of investments, how much resilience it put in In other words, what would the counterfactual have been if we hadn't done any of these things? How much further might the economy have gone down? And that will help us gauge, as part of those 3 R's for recovery, the rescue, the reimagine, and the resilience agendas. So, unless anybody has any comments to make, I think we'll just note that report, and thank you, as always, Angela, for that. So, just to note, we've got the draft minutes of the last CA meeting there for you to look at, the date of our next meeting being the 21st of July, and just 3 thank yous from me. Thank you again for all of your support and all of your contributions, challenge, dedication, and all of the right words through what's been a really challenging year for all of them, and without which my job as chair wouldn't be anywhere near as half as much fun, pleasure, but indeed satisfaction that it is, albeit it is now the end of year 8, and it only seems like 10 minutes since I started and wondering what the hell I was doing. My second thank you is to Peter, who's been a stalwart in terms of attending and supporting, and it's great to have had you with us on the journey over the last civic year, and we obviously look forward to continuing that dialogue. And last but by no means least, our collective thank you. I've done it already, but to you, Joanna, for all that you've done since we met 5, if not a little longer ago, years, and your contribution. And I hope you will feel, as I do, this is not goodbye, but au revoir. And perhaps, as Mark and Cameron have already beaten me to it, a digital and another show of applause perhaps would be appropriate. So thank you, all of you. Go well, go safe, go happy, and all of that jazz. And albeit a couple of minutes prior to my self-imposed time deadline, we have finished. But as I say, a long meeting, but we've covered a lot of ground. And to reassure Kate and others on that inclusivity piece, it's not lost on me, and we will be looking to see how ab initio we get it as right as we can. But I don't promise it'll be perfection, because sadly that doesn't exist in reality. But anyway, thank you everybody, and hopefully have a good evening.